When I got a call saying that they were making this show that was set 200 years before Game of Thrones, I was really interested.
When I got the gig, for that split second, you're like, oh my God, you're in Game of Thrones, it's the biggest thing ever. Then you put the phone down, you're like, oh God, now I've got to do it.
Game of Thrones has such a history and a fan base and a culture that exists beyond it and around it.
It's the biggest TV show, so yeah, so there's a bit of pressure to live up to.
How do we make Thrones but not Thrones? What's good about Thrones? What worked in Thrones? What didn't? What do we want to better? How do we want to evolve the style?
It wasn't just a prequel for prequel's sake. There was actually a reason to tell the story. The Targaryens are the fascinating dynasty that we don't really know much about from the original books because at that point they've all died out. There was this once great day where there were dozens of Targaryens running around and a bunch of dragons, and they ruled over Westeros. It was a time of peace and prosperity, and everybody knew that if you messed with the Targaryens, you would get the dragons, so nobody dared to overthrow them. This period in Westeros was a very decadent time. So you get to see what the realm looks like before it descends into the detritus and post-decadence of war that you see in the original series. So I was fascinated in going back to that time and seeing the Targaryens at their height and learning what it was that Daenerys lost in trying to win back throughout the story.
The original Game of Thrones was very much an epic that was weaving together various different threads. It still has that scale and scope, but it's really just the story of one family slowly tearing itself apart.
There's a wish fulfillment for an audience of things they want to see. We're not here to not give it to them. We're here to give them the thing that they want, just not in the way that they're expecting.
We're not trying to rehash the past. We're trying to find something fresh and exciting.
We wanted to very much embrace the feel and the world of Game of Thrones, but we had the flexibility to enlarge and enhance. But there was this very strong feeling that we wanted the audience to feel they're in the same show.
The first time I walked on set where King's Landing's been built, I feel that no one told them that that isn't how films are made now, that you don't have to build the whole castle. But no, it's all there and it's all in the right place.
You read the script at home and you imagine the scene, and then when you come in, it's always twice the size you imagined it.
You walk around these sets that look like ancient monuments and buildings with massive statues, or you can be on these amazing locations. You cannot believe that this is on the earth somewhere this extraordinary.
The other series of Game of Thrones was absolutely brilliant, and the costume were brilliant. So it was not a question of doing better, it was just a question of doing something beautiful.
We had said to ourselves, we're going to pull our horns in on season 1. We're going to start in a more grounded, more intimate way. But even with our horns pulled in, it was just big.
One of the many beautiful things that George did with his creation of Westeros is it really feels three-dimensional and fully realized, and that there's thousands of years of history and you can get lost in a good way in the world of Westeros.
For me, the best fiction, the best drama is about characters. House of the Dragon is a story about very flawed human beings, capable of love and hate, capable of doing good things, capable of doing monstrous things.
I genuinely hope that audiences are open to watching a new chapter in the Game of Thrones saga.
Game of Thrones was its own thing, and it was a cultural phenomenon. But this is something else, it's a different story. The scale of the story is told in a different way.
All that size that we loved in Game of Thrones is here, but House of the Dragon is rooted in the domestic and the familial.
I hope fans will get everything that they got out of Game of Thrones and more. More dragons.
I, Corlys Velaryon.
I, Lord Hobart Hightower, promise to be faithful to King Viserys.
I swear this, by the old gods and the new.
Westeros is basically a feudal society. It's ruled by many noble houses, some of them going back hundreds or even thousands of years. Two of the biggest players are the Velaryons and the Hightowers.
The Hightowers are from a very ancient, wealthy, powerful household who have been front and centre of politics for hundreds of years.
The Hightower sigil has a torch on it, and their motto is "We light the way." That comes across within the characters of the Hightowers.
Their seat of power is the southern coast, Old Town, which was for many thousands of years the biggest city in Westeros. The Faith was headquartered there for many years. That was where the High Septon, our equivalent of Pope, had his seat.
Within the series, you have old gods and new gods, and the Seven is new religiosity, and the Hightowers have a strong connection with the High Septon.
When we first opened the series, Otto Hightower is Hand of the King, and I think there's a Hightower fire there.
There's a saying, when the king eats, the hand shits. He steers the small council on the king's behalf when it's necessary and ensures the king's wishes are enforced.
Otto's an advisor, but Viserys is quite suspicious of him.
Otto sees the danger in everything, and even though his intentions are good, he's also persuaded himself that there is nothing but good intention behind his action.
The gods have yet to make a man who lacks the patience for absolute power, Your Grace.
The Velaryons are of Valyrian blood, from the freehold of Valyria, the mightiest empire in the west. Destruction was coming to Valyria, the Doom, as it would later be called. And they actually arrived in Westeros before the Targaryens.
Hightide is a standalone castle belonging to Lord Corlys.
He's master of ships. He's the greatest sailor of the land. He's the one who's done these famous 9 voyages. The Velaryons control the greatest and strongest fleet.
The Sea Snake is a collector and a trophy hunter and very proud of his voyages, so he festoons his hall in all of the one objects from his 9 voyages across the Narrow Sea and beyond. The Sea Snake is the richest man in Westeros aside from the throne, but it's not quite good enough for him. He wants his blood on the throne.
He was there when Viserys was chosen as king. He felt it should have been his wife, and he's never really forgotten that.
The queen who never was. To have your husband as your champion, constantly saying it should have been you, it should have been you, it should have been her, is fantastic. There's a classic example of a healthy, strong marriage.
The Velaryons were not pleased by this, but when the realm is against you 20-1, you'd be pretty foolish to go to arms to try to press that. Jaehaerys did not want bloodshed. He wanted a smooth transition to his successor.
History does not remember blood. It remembers names.
The dragons are a power men should never have trifled with. One that brought Valyria its doom. If we don't mind our own histories, it will do the same to us.
I was fascinated in going back to that time of high decadence and peace and prosperity and seeing the Targaryens at their height.
The height of an empire usually means the height of its technology, and so we had to show this idea that this was an opulent and decadent group of people.
So you get to see what the realm looks like before it descends into the detritus and post-decadence of war that you see in the original series. Jim and his team created this really immersive environment for not only the cast, but the crew to realize this world and again, immerse people into something.
The Red Keep composite was the jewel of the whole piece for me because that's where the bulk of the action is taking place in this season. So I introduced this big staircase as a sort of symbol of power, and that it was a sense of parliament as well as just the home of the family. And the composite also allows lots of positions to observe the little pockets of conversations that are going on, to add to the intrigue and the conspiracy that must go on all the time in those places.
It's all built in, it's not on separate stages, which was really fun to play with, and it was incredible.
Wow, I've never been on a set like the Red Keep.
Part of the discussion about the Red Keep and all of the familiar locations, particularly the familiar sets, is I need to be able to shoot in every direction without it becoming a visual effect, and you can certainly do that on the Red Keep. We were 200 years in the past, and so Velaryon architecture, we wanted it to be quite brutalist quality to the Targaryens, which then found its way to King's Landing, but is not very represented in the original show.
We have utilised some of the assets from Game of Thrones, but obviously the set decorate and design team, they want to create a fresh look. It's so relatable to Game of Thrones, but it's got to be its own entity. So stuff from their archive that wasn't used that we've repurposed and turned into something.
In terms of set decorating and creating a new world almost that has some elements of Game of Thrones running through it, I've been given the opportunity to actually play with that a little bit and come up with new ideas, and that's been really exciting.
All that size that we loved in Game of Thrones is here.
Dragon's Saddle is one thing, but the Iron Throne is the most dangerous seat in the realm.
The throne is the big one for us on this. You know, it was very iconic in the Game of Thrones season. You know, you wanted to make sure you're doing it justice, but also improving it and doing what we can. And Ryan and Miguel were very involved in that from day one.
I was fascinated with this idea of what if the throne had changed over time in Westeros, and what if there was a whole story to tell about the kind of devolution of the throne to the thing that you see in the original series.
This was all about the power of the Targaryen dynasty, and so every element in that throne represented a fallen warrior.
The operatic quality meant we needed to reconfigure the throne room, and as a result, the throne kind of spread out and became this carpet of swords.
One of the many beautiful things that George did with his creation of Westeros is it really is a truly immersive world, and I'm really excited for everybody to see it. One of the challenges of telling a story about a time where there's great decadence and a period of very long peace is how do you create drama out of that? And we really knew a tournament felt like a great way to do that.
May the luck of the Seven shine upon all combatants!
When I first read about the tournament, I thought, oh, it's going to be in a field with some trees around it, and maybe there'll be some flags.
I talked to the guys about the tournament very early on because I wanted to bring something stronger and more powerful to support the Targaryen dynasty.
Jim produced this drawing of basically the Colosseum, and I said, really, Jim, have you got the money to build that? And he goes, yeah. Which I should never have listened to.
As soon as we saw the mirrored half-moon shape that he did, it was glorious. And we saw a real need for it. They would, of course, have royal tournament grounds. It would be in the city, surrounded by the buildings. It just made sense.
Probably one of the biggest challenges was where do we shoot the tournament and how big do we make it and where do we build that set piece that was obviously eventually put on the back lot.
We had to make a level platform to build the set on because obviously it's on quite an incline. So we had to prepare a whole farmer's field out there.
The difficulty there is creating a tournament that's suitable for the stunts that are going to be enacted out there.
Especially with horses, you need soft ground. You don't want the horses to hurt themselves, you don't want the stuntmen to hurt themselves. So that huge layer of mulch was there to make a soft landing.
Suddenly we have this huge stadium that we have to fill out. And of course, with all the COVID restrictions, extras only amounted to 150, and we had to look like we had 1,000.
So where we have to put crowd into a shot that doesn't have enough crowd in it, you can either go full CG or you can use sprites.
And for that, what we do, as we're shooting, we're pulling the extras away and we film the sprites from all sorts of different angles with all sorts of different actions. Cheering, crying out, sitting down, standing up, and then we literally populate them like little cards.
Good fortune to you, cousin.
I would gladly take it. I thought I needed it.
The royal box itself is this huge, great dome, which gives us a nice, intimate area for all the dialogue that goes on between all the various characters.
I wanted that to be the dominant part of the arena, and it was quite a costly thing, that box.
But I promise, you will not be disappointed.
It's the best spot to watch the jousting and to see the knights clashing in the center of the arena.
Well done. That was great.
Gods. Kings.
fire. And blood. Dreams didn't make us kings. Dragons did.